Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Zamga Gran au Khago Pukhtano. Welcome to our show Pat Laluna Hidden Gems Series 8 with Dr. Imran. Our Master Zama co-host ka Hina.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. As Asfandiar said, we welcome you all to our show. Musa and then their special guest there, Dr. Imran Khan. He has a very
Or bilkul
interesting.
Dr. Imran Chikam de अगर उदाशन त फील्ड के स्पेशलाइजेशन करे थे चिकम त डेर कम खलक अप्रोच के और डेर यंग एज के so he's actually a PhD in neuroscience और बियागे स्पेशलाइजेशन चिकम दे अगर उदासी फील्ड की करे थे चिकम डेर अपकमिंग दे so his PhD in neuroscience is with the thesis in artificial intelligence. Our thus the pata that your future is all about data and artificial intelligence and combining it together. No munga wadir late kuna zamunga chikam yo young puhtun our Canadian blood chikam the de munga welcome ko our har kalebo Dr. Imran ta assalamu alaikum Imran.
Walaikum assalam.
How
How
are
are
you
you
Imran? Singe ta
joining
so
today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good,
bilkul
Alhamdulillah.
khair khairiyat. Hopefully the weather is getting better. कोशिश को
Yeah.
barbecue start को खुदा सो तब पता भी दलता जमूंगा Ontario के बयाना lockdown शेवे थे no munga har chat tabu check per khal sati and that's why you can see munga show usually bamak ke live yoze ke bo but because of COVID restrictions munga chede daga us this computer bane daga
Multiple locations now, Munga Life, which is still
बिल्कुल
fine.
बिल्कुल दगा मुंग te issues di Imran تاسو مونږ د پاره یو ډیر اونر یې چې زمونږ ینګ پښتنو کې تاسو یو داسې فیلډ چوز کړی دی چې کوم ډیر خلک ډیر کم خلک دومره specified field ته ځي usually if even people go it's usually just basic doctors or engineers کنه او in our culture or especially when we come back from home these are some fields that people usually focus on but you chose a field which is even मतलब further in detail in that kana.
Mhm.
Is there any specific reason Chitaso das field choose karo and what led you towards this career?
I think part of it was, when you're going through your undergrad and you're in that position where you're trying to decide, okay, I'm getting my degree, but what am I going to do with this degree, right? And whether it's a job or a career, whatever it might be. And for me, I was lucky. I had parents that were very supportive in whatever direction I chose, but at the same time, for me, it was always something that I could see myself doing for the next, 30 years, 40 years, however long your career is going to take. So I've always had an interest in technology. And, I was always also passionate about biology and science. And this was one of those few fields that it's the connection between the two, right? Like you said earlier, artificial intelligence and data, you see it on the news all the time. They always talk about how valuable it is and how big it is moving forward. And this is one of the few fields that kind of combines those things. So for me, it was a passion thing, but I was able to find kind of my niche between two different sectors that I really enjoyed. So that's kind of
Okay.
why I came to this one.
Like indeed, a very, very unique combination. Look at you,
Mhm.
like neuroscience in itself is an independent field with so much
Yep.
depth in it, and then
Bilkul.
so then
So
kind of correlated with AI, which is a completely different trend. Like as
Yep.
Manjaro was mentioning, see, yes, we do have the trends like a typical lawyer, doctor, see, even IT, then because I know it's quite popular amongst our
Mhm.
the Mumchikam community. However, yours is a rather unique field, so we definitely feel honored to have you here with us today and to be
Thank you.
sharing your experience.
Hina, because the yo sheba dave much Imran, why don't you let our viewers know what is neuroscience, what is artificial intelligence? Dear Khalak,
Exactly.
hina munga really
Yeah.
How do
neuroscience,
they get to
neurology,
relate?
neurosurgeon, doctor there, but detail ki like what is neuroscience, what is artificial intelligence, and then how do you, whether it's academically or in your career, how do you combine those together? Awal
Yeah.
munta
So
so we learned something from you two in this. Okay, sabala so di field tam ratilwadi, so they know
yeah.
what is this field.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So neuroscience, traditionally is the study of the brain, right? And it can be at different levels. You can do like sociology and psychology is part of neuroscience, and then like you said, you have the more medicinal fields where it's neurobiology and neurosurgery, that type of thing. So traditionally, yeah, it's just the study of the brain. And artificial intelligence, the way most people are introduced to it is that they see it in what they see on the news as far as, robots and search engines and all these things that kind of analyze data and give you some sort of, loose solution, or they figure out a problem for you, what have you. And what my thesis was, it actually started my undergrad. My undergrad thesis project, my professor at the time for my neuroscience class, she was working with some big tech companies on making artificial intelligence more human-like, right? Because that's always the goal with artificial intelligence. And one of the big struggles in the world right now is that there are certain things that no matter what you program a machine to do, it can't quite do it like a person can do it. So my thesis and moving into my PhD and all of that was really focused on mapping artificial intelligence, so traditionally computer science, code and stuff like that, and robotics, to more traditional pathways in the human brain, and working on trying to solve those pathways so that it was a little bit more natural, right? Like when you're on the internet and you're on like talking to one of those chat bots, you can tell when it's a chat bot, right? So the goal of our project was to make it a little bit less, hey, that's a robot I'm talking to, and a little bit more natural. And I think, if you YouTube some videos, you'll see some very realistic looking robots that have a lot more human-like interactions. So my thesis was really driven from that. And my background was originally in health sciences and biology. But like I said, I had a passion for computer science and technology from when I was a kid. My dad worked with computers and everything like that. So I think that kind of evolved, and I was able to find something that kind of combined the two later in my undergrad that really kind of took off from there and sent me for the next 10 years on a further education. So
excellent.
Wow. बिल्कुल very बिल्कुल ताप सही खबर है कोई that chatbots अक्सर how Imran said a lot of times when you're chatting you do see their bots, right? And this is a field that I touch too, so I program those bots. It's usually for e-commerce, but you can tell right away it's that robot Steve. But you're right, future ki AI dekhi rashi, and then I think it's a lot to do with analytics as well, right? The way human behavior works, whether it's shopping, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's how you behave in different, like your car, for example. Garden Chicken was designed, they're designing it in such a way. AI, like for example, I remember one of the case of Tesla. So it was so robotic, the other drivers were getting confused. The car is so perfect, bilkul robot pashanti bilkul perfectly ravani. So they wanted to create somehow human touch rashi. So I mean, this is something that you definitely in detail or also theoretically they can go right. But moving on to next question, Hina, why don't you just bring that up? Especially Manga Yoshe Dapatakulu. So like how you said, right? Parents play a big role in this. And for viewers, select their background to him. So my dad and his dad actually were roommates back from Islamia College. So they go a long way back. And this does add definitely. So, your dad came with the academic background and your mom was there too. The family did ziyat help we. So why don't you let us know, how was your family there, or what did they do specifically that led you towards this career, whether it be you, whether it be your brother. I mean, mashallah, your brother is in a very good position too. We'll come back to that afterwards. But parents, role, maybe your friends, if they played a role, and what is the guidance that you give towards parents and the youth that are over here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a big thing for me is my parents have been here since the 80s. So they both immigrated here in the mid 80s, and my dad did his master's here at Carleton University in Ottawa. So I think that played a major factor because, when they came to this country, not just our people, but South Asians in general, there weren't many of them here, right? So there wasn't the guidance and the examples that we kind of had as we grew up later in life to follow or to better understand. So my parents always had a pretty standard approach, not as traditional as some families, but they always, both for me and my brother, suggested that whatever we do in our future, career-wise, education-wise, whatever it might be, is that it should be a passion for ours. And that was always something that they took seriously. If we were choosing a course or a degree, it was like, that's fine that you want to do this degree, but do you actually like doing this degree? Like, is there something from you? You're not just doing it for the money. You're not just doing it because, your friends are doing it, whatever it might be. So that was always a big part of how our parents raised me. And I think further to that, I think my parents, like you said, because they were educated, they looked at everything very logically. And one thing, if you live in this country now, you'll see it, is that to succeed in any career path, the passion plays a big part. When I sit in an interview and I'm interviewing an employee or someone like that, and I'm sitting there, I can immediately tell if this person just did the degree and knows his stuff, or if he genuinely loves what he does and is passionate about it, and 9 times out of 10, when you're sitting in front of those people, those managers, directors, all those types of people, they're going to select a person that shows passion, because to them, it's like, this person's going to put 110%. He's not just that type of person that, just here for the job and just here for the paycheck. He actually enjoys what he does. So I think those two factors kind of played a big part. And my parents had always instilled in us, we took very different paths. Like you said, is I went into a science one, so it's a little bit more typical, but my brother, went into criminology, and he works in the military now for, their intelligence division. So it's very different career paths than our people traditionally have, but it was all from whatever you enjoy doing, whatever you like doing, follow that. And, you'll always succeed. I think if you're passionate about what you do, whether it's monetary or big job titles or whatever it is, if you're passionate about it, you'll definitely be able to, make it and be successful.
Yeah, just to add to that, like what a perfect way you put it, Imran, that like that conversation that the parents are having, is that what you're interested in? Is that what you're actually passionate about? That's a very uncommon conversation for most of the people in our community and in our background. That the post level it up, to step up that margin and say, well, is it actually what you're passionate about? And the other important point that you mentioned was that it kind of flows through and is reflected in your overall interactions. You're like, oh, so your job, almost exactly the same concept as is if whether it's just a bot or something with a more human intelligence kind of attached to it.
Exactly.
Degree job it's something that you want to pursue, you see yourself doing and enjoy doing for practically for the rest of your life. Major part.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think a part of that too, and something that goes overlooked, is when you start your career, when you start your job, your education doesn't stop at your bachelor's degree. Whether you're a doctor or, like you said, you're in IT, the way the world is now is everything is always changing and evolving, right? So that's the reason passion plays such a big role in it, is that if you're actually passionate about it, you're willing to continue learning and researching and reading up on things in your field. Whereas, again, if it's more of just like, this is my job, then you get home and that's it. You shut off your computer and you don't think about it till Monday morning. So I think that's a big piece of it. That's why the passion and enjoying what you're doing makes such a big difference in, your career and your future.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely sets up like a growth path for you, It's not, if you're coming at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, I don't even want to think about it, which, mind you, is very common. But at the least what we could do at that point, as per you suggesting as well, and I feel like we're all on the same page here, is that might as well at least let it be for something that you are interested in and that you can
exactly
and you can appreciate. No, that's definitely a point.
At the end of the day, this field is where you're giving something back to the community. Artificial intelligence, I feel, is the future. So based on that, Imran, what is your advice for a youth that wants to come towards this field? Are there opportunities in this field? How do you feel this is growing? And what is something that you see in future? If is like a lot of times people think, this is a good field, but do I have opportunities in this in the future? And knowing everything turns so fast. So what's your perspective on that? And how do you encourage youth or guide them to come towards this sector?
Yeah, and I think a big part that's overlooked when it comes to our not just my field, but kind of the fields that my field connects with, is that they're universal in the sense that, the world has changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years, in the sense that, for example, if you're interested in analytics and what we call big data, right? The type of systems where you're looking at millions of records, you have every type of company has those departments nowadays, right? Because decisions, whether it's a financial company or even like a government agency, whatever it might be, all decisions, they're being decided based on analytics and data. When tomorrow, when they decide to build a new road, in Mississauga or something like that, they're looking at traffic analysis over the last 15 years, right? So there's someone in the background that you never meet, but that has designed the algorithms or that has designed the databases or built some program on top of it, what have you. So as the world kind of evolves to more and more technology and coding and robotics, it's even more important to have those data guys on the side. So a good example is at the company I work for now, where we primarily serve educational institutions, but our number of back-end people, so people that deal with our databases and data, they outnumber our front end, our traditional coding type people, 2 to 1. Because as important as it is for the interaction that the day-to-day people are using our systems for, there's so much data being ingested on a daily basis that you need someone that can help make those decisions. So, a lot of our stuff, it helps school districts, for example, focus scholarships, right? So if they know that, hey, well, this part of our school district has a lot of South Asian or, West Indian or something like that, it's like, we need to focus on these career paths, or we need to show them that these are options for their future. So there's stuff like that. And the sky's the limit. I have a lot of friends that when we finished our PhD, they even started their own companies, where they're analyzing data, and they work for, they're contracted out to government agencies or big social network companies where their sole purpose is just, here's a 1 terabyte of data, and we need you to tell us what it means and give us some analysis on it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot there when it comes to that. And artificial intelligence, like you said earlier, it's to power and make those automated so that you don't have someone sitting 8 hours a day just deciding things, but there's some sort of computer system that's making that analysis with the human touch, not just a robotics kind of input and output system that just gives you like, hey, this is what I found out, but a human that can say like, I'm correlating these things, and I think this is what, this data set is telling you, type of thing. So yeah, opportunities are endless when it comes to that aspect, for sure.
बिल्कुल दा खबर है सही दा हिना. And basically I've noticed too tasubam katili chi har kas kam industry ke that he's talking about data. And I remember one of my friends talking about this. Yeah, Pakistan ke we have so much health data, but we don't know what to do with it because the data is there, but they don't know whether it's AI or bringing that data to an analytics platform. They don't know how to use that data. No, data is everything, and I mean, this is what people are working on, whether it be health, whether it be online business. You probably might have seen a lot of times it says, say, you bought this, you may like this.
Yeah,
based
exactly.
on your buying decisions, that algorithm, they've made a decision for that. So and I can correlate with this too. Like a lot of times when I used to do online business before, we used to look at what the competitor is selling. Now we don't even look at the competitor. We look at the data that the platform has.
Yeah.
So we look at the data, and then we try to bring ourselves up using that data. No, there's the data that's not even a real person. It's just whether it's computation or someone that has programmed. We take that data, analyze it, and biamunga guru, not just the competitor, but the whole world Yoshante that is on that platform. The dumra data but they've made it into such a way. Third party, that was how he said people have started their own company. So exactly like that, there are third party softwares that take that data and make it a meaning out of it to tell the sellers or buyer what that data means or how can it help you. And I guess this is how it will go towards positive too, right? Just specifically, for example, I'm not sure, but like for example, 𝐒𝐚𝐭 in neuroscience or 𝐈𝐦𝐬𝐿, so certain decisions that you might be making about your kid's future, it might be data that the computation or whatever brings out to you that tells you in a better way. Just mind AI system, okay? So this is actually better for your son based on the data that he has done, like 10, for example, high school that lily come course shoes like a lot of times I would say our phone knows more about us maybe than even our parents or partners, because agar zamunga behavior total time guri comes here ke touch ko dumra pure ahina chitaso pa yo page bane 𝐏𝐚𝐭 kana, they even study that. No, like unlimited potential this thing Imran
absolutely.
Is there something interesting that you would like to share in AI that you feel is the future, which like
I think
something because these stuff as I mean coming from a science background to always excite you. Future khabar hai like when scientists talk about it. I was just listening to something yesterday. 1973 they were talking what will be in 2000, and you're a data scientist too. So something that you can share that you see in future, you're excited about.
I think the big thing that, you touched on it a little bit, but when it comes to data that's accessible by people now, there's so much that it's not just pushing, your examples, you brought up a lot of, shopping and e-commerce and finance. And traditionally, that's where a lot of the big data went towards, right? Or research was always a big one, but it's evolving in the sense that it's driving other decisions, right? So a big thing that people don't always realize, and, it may have gone even unnoticed during, our COVID-19 situation over the last 12 months, but they're leveraging the same data, this, where people are by tracking their cell phones, this and that, to help them understand social and behavioral issues as well, right? So focusing on specific neighborhoods that are underserved by certain services, that type of thing. And they can tell that, for example, that, okay, well, Asfandyar lives in this neighborhood and he's every day during COVID, it took him 40 minutes to go to the nearest pharmacy, right? So whether a pharmacy uses that data to push something, or, the government uses it like, okay, well, we need to figure out if we need to deploy vaccines in that area, what's the easiest way, what type of clinic. So I think what's changing significantly is what in the industry they tend to call, more of the old school and slower adoption types of agencies and institutes. They're starting to drive their decisions with that data. And they're not just driving the decision, but sometimes outright making the decision, right? So when you look at these vaccine rollouts, they're sitting there and they're saying like, okay, well, we have 200,000 people over the age of 60 in that neighborhood or that area of the city, but there's no pharmacies nearby. So what's the best way to do it? Do we do it at drugstores because they have 15, or do we do that? So what's really evolving is the way that we're interpreting the data. And I think as it grows, we saw it in the elections in the United States, and you're seeing it all around the world now, but very quickly, people are really realizing how much data there actually is and how they can craft basically anything, whether negative or positive. They can, build a case for anything, right? So you'll see it more and more, I think. As it kind of becomes front and center, you'll see that piece. And then I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's definitely times where it's a little invasive, where maybe they know too much and there's ways that you should protect yourself and that type of thing. So I think it's twofold, but I think that's really where the evolution is that we're no longer just using GPS data to tell you how to go from, here, Ontario to somewhere in Whitby or something like that, right? You're now using GPS data to tell like, hey, this person stops at that Tim Hortons every day, and then he always goes there before work, and on his way home, he always goes this way. So all those things, it'll change everything from how they design roadways to neighborhoods to where schools are placed. All that stuff is kind of going to start being driven by that. So it's definitely, it's about to explode. I think we saw a lot of it in the last couple of years where data became much bigger and much more important, but it's at that point now where the most basic person can just go online and he, like you said, he can find out everything he wants about a company or its customers or anything of that nature. So in that sense, I think artificial intelligence and decision-making is definitely going to be a much bigger part than what we've seen, in the 10 years before us.
So Imran, along with this, like data and there's future too towards this. What is something hobbies taso study, traveling, like the more detail but what is something that you do on the side to enjoy, something that interests you, like hobbies studies and the Pakistan na comes in and stuff where your parents, where you're from?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with the Pakistan question. So my dad is from Ardan. And my mom is from Hazara, so she's from Ahmedabad, Mansehra area up north. So they both met here, though. They both got married here. So it wasn't from back home that they met, but that's where they're from. And I think from a hobbies perspective, we haven't done much in the last year, but I really like traveling. And it's something that anytime I meet anyone younger that asks me, like, what should I do? I'm 21, I'm 20, what should I do? And my recommendation is that the biggest thing you can do to kind of broaden your horizons is travel to different cultures and countries, not just the traditional like Muslim countries, not just going to the Emirates or, going to Saudi or anything like that. But I think expanding and seeing other cultures, because people who've experienced those, I think you have a better outlook about like
Yeah.
your community and the people around you, and you have a lot more insight into how things work. So I think I always recommend it. And again, it's an amazing thing to do. You know, food, and whether you like food or whether you like, you know, outdoors type of thing, I think traveling has something for everyone for sure.
Any specific country that you enjoyed a lot, and a country that you want to go, and why?
So I really like history. Like I like old things, as some people like to say. So you know, I was big on going to, you know, Europe, all over Europe. I really enjoyed Spain and France, and even like, you know, Turkey, those types of places. You get to see buildings that are 2,000-3,000 years old, you know, and they're from the prophet's time, they're before the prophet's time, you know, they can be. So I think it's always interesting that you're visiting a place that billions of people have visited over the last, you know, 10,000 years or whatever it might be. So uh, on my hit list, once, you know, things calm down a little bit, is I've always wanted to go see Egypt. That's somewhere I've always wanted to go. So hopefully
Is
once
that
the
because of
restrictions
history as well?
yeah, history, you know, the pyramids, everything like that. But I think it's an interesting culture. It's you know, it's a mix of traditional, like, you know, Arabian cultures, but because of where they're located, there's a lot of European influence and then African influence. So it's like a pretty interesting melting pot of a lot of different types of cultures. So
Definitely.
Very
Mina, is there anything you want to touch upon?
Well, I think we're barely scratching the surface of all this AI and neuroscience, everything, and what's kind of you know, like everything, the interesting future that lies ahead of us. And but I think the main point that I would like to emphasize on from here is that like a lot of people from my community are definitely encouraging their children to go towards IT, and that's also a variation of this field. And I think from our conversation today with Imran, basically emphasized the fact that there is a whole field of opportunities in this career field, whether it be directly to AI, because there's so much data coming, and it can be translated in so many different ways, and there's a niche and a requirement for it in any which way, and you could find your interest, provided this has interest or inclination in computers or this it could be like a field of opportunities, whether it's something as simple as like actually working with the city to try and, like, you know, map out their requirements and you know, the logistics of things based on graphics, or something as you know, far out as like, okay, how do I read the emotions of this person and how to interpret it and how to interact with them, like a very interesting.
And and I think a piece of that too is, like you said, the fields nowadays are so broad. I think an important piece, and what helped me when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, is, you know, networking and connecting with people all in different varies of any industry. It makes a big difference, because I think anyone, especially when you're doing your undergrad and that type of thing, you have very different expectations of what the workplace will be like compared to what it actually is. And the only way you get that exposure, other than working it yourself, is by connecting with those people. And I always tell people that I've been working in this industry for 10 years, but one thing I'll say is that no one has ever declined me asking questions about what they do and how they do it or anything like that. So I think a big thing is you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to your professors or your TAs, or if you know people in the community, never hesitate to just kind of, you know, ask, like, can I have your email so I can ask you questions down the road, or, you know, what do you want to say? I think it's an important piece that goes overlooked. Good grades only get you so far, you know, knowing your stuff only gets you so far, but knowing people and understanding all that part, it's a big kind of missing piece, I think, when people are looking at career choices and what to do in their future. So I definitely recommend that. And again, in 10 years, I've messaged, I've emailed people in different countries, and I've never had anyone that ignored it and said, like, I'm too busy. They always say, yeah, let's set up a time and I can give you 30 minutes out of my day to talk more about this type of thing, you know? So I always kind of recommend that to anyone that's unsure of what path they want to go down.
And what a learning experience for themselves, even finding out about oneself, that would be, even for yourself, right? Like, it's finding out about yourself is just as much of a journey as is everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Right. So that's definitely what an important point to mention, that networking, and don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them questions and see how, like, their responses are, because that will also help you learn about yourself and explore maybe even your interests by that token.
Exactly.
بالکل دا ډیر صحیح خبره عمران وکړه چې نیټورکینګ او دغه شان د موږ هم چې ډیر ټایم پس ته ملاو شو عمران ماته میسج کړو چې we should meet up ما یار دا like his field is different my field is different because موږ هغه دغه شانتي کمیونټي کې لو شو چې موږ نیټورکینګ کله کوم موږ یار سنا سکارونو کې دیشي دیو جن به نیټورکینګ or something like that. But when we met, like day time pasta munga milau shu, we just had like a coffee or yosi ki kinas do aram se gap shap lago. But agar do cheez munga yo attachment jod show yo amens ki chikam yo diwar duma time na jod show dear freely open show. Or dear kasa daga shanti che like a lot of times you think yeah networking ukam yari ki khalaq within community ukam community na bahar na ko maga angrez de aga de and when we're stuck within that daga. No, I think these are golden words, especially whether it's come field kan taswe, whether that be high school, university, or chimaki life then sanji no networking. I feel is one of the very important aspect of career growth. Kana. No, Hina, I think we should wrap up.
For sure, yes. I think taken.
I mean, also again, munga told katunu to akpal bahu chimung sare yodumra special guest ragre. او صرف دی کې عمران خپل سټرګل دی ډیر زیات چې کومه کړی دی او ګایډنس سپیشلی پیرنټس طرف نه پیرنټس پلی ا هیوج رول چې دا یو داشن د فیلډ کې چې کوم کې ډیر مور پلان بچو ته نه لګي چې نه بس انجینیرو کا or a field where they see چې financial کې دي benefits پوي یا نور څه بوي خو داشن ته ګول چې کوم فیوچر کې growing وي نو هغه ته ډیر کم پیرنټس انکریج کوي نو this is something چې موږ پیرنټس will definitely explore کوي زموږ age چې کوم young youth دي عمران پشان دي نور داشن ته دیونه ته پوښتنه کوي like Imran said چې ایسو تاسو ته نه کې ډیر کم خلک بوي چې کوم تاسو ته actually advice نه راکړي so we have such talented youth in our community of the community as well که بل څوک کوم community نه بهرم go ask them any questions you have او ماشومان چې څه interest وي کوم شي کې passion وي خبره دای د چې نن تاسو هغه ته وای دا ډیګرو کې هغه وکړي خو مخکې چې کوم ټول ژوند دی هغه کې بیا passion نه نو هغه به مخکې ته نه ځي and this is a live example in front of us Imran Shokam dekhiyo and study خو هغه وکړه هغه نه پستا passion is the thing that kept him moving forward نو مونږ به definitely کوشش کوو او دعا کوو چې دوی مخکې ته خدای نورم حقي او مونږ ته دغه شانتي ګایډنس راکړي او لایک ما ډیر زیات خوشحالي کیږي چې یو پیرنټس ته پارم دا یو پراود مومنت ته چې زوی داشن ته فیلډ کې انټر شو چې کوم هغه نور ته ګایډ کولی شي so everyone we're very happy چې تاسو زموږ شو باندې راغلی دومره ټایم تاسو موږ راکو او هینا I think we should wrap up.
Indeed. I think Imran was kind enough to give us time out of his day and join us for this event and share his experiences with our community. So really, we're actually very appreciative of that, Imran. Thank you so much.
او موږ خپل کتونو ته دغه کې سلامونه وټول ته اگین تاسو زموږ شو پر لالونه سیریز 8 with Dr. Imran او موږ هر چاته دغه چې خپل خیال ساته نیکسټ شو پورې stay safe موږ دلته اونټاریو کاناډا کې لاک ډاون هم دی نو کوشش کوئ خپل خیال ساته خپل فیملیز خیال ساته او ان شاء الله تاسو سره موږ نیکسټ شو کې به ملایو الله پامان اگین Imran thank you so much Hina thank you so much thank you so much Allah پامان
Allah Hafiz